So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so that's like we mentioned, only series that's done is that one. So now we're going to the rest of the playoffs. We'll start with let's start in the East since we already started in the East. We'll go. We mentioned Philly, Washington with the Westbrook situation. Unfortunately for Westbrook and the Wizards, they're down 3-0 as of right now, Memorial Day. They're probably. I think we probably expect them to lose this game, maybe win this game, pride, but then lose the next game, Gentleman sweep. I mean, I don't have much to say in this series. It's just Philly taking care of business. And meanwhile, Washington, what we're kind of seeing, where it's really just Westbrook and Bradley Beal. And Bradley Beal's obviously hampered by that hamstring injury that he was dealing with during the play-in. I think prior to the play-in as well, because he's not, you know, I mean, he's still putting up 30, but he's struggling from three and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, not much surprises there for me. I don't know about you if you have any comments about that one.
No, I mean, I can't see a way that Philly loses tonight's game. To be honest, I think it's going to be a sweep. Like you said, maybe a gentleman's sweep kind of situation happens, but even with Bradley Beal putting up the points that he is, whenever Ben Simmons is guarding him, he is struggling. He can't figure it out, and so he's getting a lot of his production when Ben Simmons isn't on him, and I think that is hampering any of their chances to potentially win. Is just Ben Simmons switching onto him or guarding him in key situations. He can that can really stop any momentum that they have. And also just the presence that Embiid is down low, it's
Yeah.
going to make life incredibly hard for Russ and everybody, when they're trying to drive. So,
And
yeah, I
they
mean,
have no one to check him on the other end. As
oh
we've seen,
yeah,
Embiid's
Embiid,
had been so efficient offensively.
if he wanted to, he could probably put up like 60 on him. Like if he really wanted, just
Yeah,
take every shot.
yeah. So, yeah, we'll see with that. I don't think we have seen a Ben Simmons three yet, but maybe he haven't. Once we haven't seen it, um, and maybe he'll bust that later in the playoffs. So we'll see how that goes. So that's the 1-8 matchup. The 2-7 matchup. Celtics Nets, obviously, down three. Now Brooklyn up 3-1. Tatum had that really good game. I think the game dropped the 50 burger. I believe Kemba is out now, right? Is he in?
Kemba and Robert Williams both, I think it's not like official they're going to miss game 5, but it's like 95% chance
It's
they're
not
going to
looking
miss
good.
game 5.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see their day today. So, yeah. So tomorrow is game 5, going back to Brooklyn. I mean, we mentioned it talking to some of our friends. Obviously, this is hypothetical, but if they had Jaylen Brown, maybe the series might be different. It would probably be 2-2 since game 1 was pretty close. Um, but right now, kind of going as expected for this series. No real surprises on the court. Um, I mean, I know people are already. We know a Brooklyn fan that's already going crazy, but yeah, I'm so interested to see. A little bit of me still scared about Brooklyn being, like in regards long term. Like we saw that one game that they lost. I mean, all these games have really been. I feel like offensive, just like all the games have been 100 plus scoring for both teams. So I mean, we'll see. I'm trying to think. Brooklyn's two. They would play Philly. No, they wouldn't play Philly. They play
They play
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
So
Yeah.
I'm excited if Brooklyn does advance to see that matchup because that once in Milwaukee, good defensive team, and they had good matchups during the regular season, but also just match up with them well. They got Drew Holiday. I know they lost DiVincenzo. We'll go over that. And I forgot to mention that in that series. But just I think it's a big loss. He's a good defensive guy and offensive player too for them. But Drew Holiday, I imagine, will be on Kyrie, and Middleton might. Middleton might be on Harden, or they might switch that up, and then Giannis on Katie. So I'm just see what Brooklyn can do then. But as of right now, yeah, I mean they're getting away with just being able to outscore the Celtics. But obviously you're the Celtics fan. You watch these games definitely more in depth than I have. What are your thoughts on this series?
I don't feel like I've learned anything about Brooklyn. Like every game, it's like the point distribution. Besides game 2, where like Joe Harris went off and they were getting some good contribution from different players, it's been like probably 85% of their scoring is coming from the big three of Kyrie, Harden, and Durant, and that's expected. But what's going to happen if they do play a team like Milwaukee and some of those guys start getting clamped? Because if we've seen, I mean, outside of the game that the Celtics won, where Kyrie did pretty terrible. I mean, but in that game, Harden and Durant went off. I mean, they're just really the Celtics just don't have the firepower, the defensive presence, especially down low, to really compete with any of these guys. I mean, Marcus Smart can do some things, Tatum can do some things, but they're not. I mean, they're the seventh seed. They're hampered. They're just trying to keep up, right? They don't have the defensive talent right now to try and stop them. And so that's why I don't feel like I've learned anything about Brooklyn. The series is going as expected. I think I predicted Nets in 5, and I said Celtics would steal one because Tatum dropped 50. That's about where we're going
Yeah,
right now.
should
I
should
think
should have put
Brooklyn's
money on
gonna.
it, man. You would have probably made a good
We
parlay
should
off
have.
that.
Yeah, I bet Brooklyn's gonna win Game 5. I mean, they're going back to Brooklyn. I don't think that Kyrie stomps on that logo if he thinks they're coming back,
Yeah,
because doing that's gonna get a pretty. I mean, it's already been pretty visceral, like the booing and like every time he touches the ball, which I love. I think it's great and hilarious. But I mean, doing that, I don't think he plans to come back to Boston. I don't think Brooklyn will come back to Boston, especially like we said with Kemba and Robert Williams both out on top of Jaylen Brown already. They just don't have the depth, the talent right now to beat them. So yeah, it's going as expected. Milwaukee is it's going to be an interesting series because on the regular season, Milwaukee won 2 out of the 3 games that they played, and the game they only lost by 2. So I mean, they were able to keep up with scoring there, and they have, like you said, they have Drew Holiday, they have Middleton, they have Giannis, and they can all guard people.
and
So
PJ Tucker. So we forget that to have that, to have him as well. He's been a very solid acquisition for them. So
yeah, and that means if Brooklyn, because they have been kind of running this weird small ball lineup with like Blake Griffin as their starting center, if they do that, that allows Milwaukee to potentially not use a Brook Lopez and use like Giannis as their center and throw in PJ Tucker out there to guard Blake Griffin or somebody like that. So, yeah, Milwaukee, they have the versatility, they have the depth, they have different options. Losing DiVincenzo could prove to be pretty tough for them because I mean he's a starting level player for them. But it's going to be an interesting series for sure because I think the Bucks came out and they really to me they proved a lot. Like I think that was the sort of statement series that they needed. Obviously, I mean it's the Heat. They have issues and all that kind of stuff as we went on, but there were still plenty of people that were picking the Heat to win that series, myself included. And so the fact that the Bucks went out and dominated them like they did, because it was pure domination,
mhm.
it makes me truly believe the Bucks could potentially have the talent and the scheme and everything to go all the way. Um, a lot of people are considering them, the Sixers and the Nets, all still in it for the East, really. But I think the Bucks, they're the real deal this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if this could potentially be their year. But facing Brooklyn's going to be tough.
Yeah, it'll be a good barometer test for them. So, all right, so that's the Brooklyn Nets series. Last one in the East is the Knicks Hawks. Hawks currently up. Is that? Let me double check. Sorry, 3-1, going back to New York. I mean, we talked once again with one of our friends that's a Knicks fan. I mean, he had interesting points, but um, I think the main thing though and he made it a point too, that is just we were seeing that the Hawks. I think it's obvious that the Hawks are the more talented team. Brooklyn had a good run, or not Brooklyn, New York. They had a good gritty run. I know they're the higher seed, but we're starting to see, besides Derrick Rose, who's been really good, and Julius Randle, who I know people have been disappointed, but he's been doubled. He's really been just had a tough series. But outside of those two guys, I mean, really, Kate and Alec Burks had a good game. But other than that, a lot of guys that can only do maybe one or two things. Like they don't even have a lot of two-way guys outside of Reggie Bullock. Because I mean, Emmanuel Quickly's hasn't been that great, but he's a rookie, so kind of give him a pass. RJ Barrett's been disappointing. I know he's in his second year,
Second year.
but still he was considered the more pro-ready one out of the 3 guys in that draft, and he's really struggled. And then other than that, I mean, their other picks, Kevin Knox, who hasn't even seen the court really. Obi Toppin's been okay, but once again, like just really there for just cuts to the basket, maybe space the floor and able to get a board. But other than that, I mean, yeah, the Hawks are just like I said. I mean, there's a reason I really don't like. Okay, I'm fine with Trae Young talking trash, but really, like Trae Young, what have you really done? This is your first time in the playoffs. But hey, I mean, if it gets his team going, that's fine. But yeah, in regards to the Hawks, we're seeing kind of, they're doing really well on both ends of the floor. They have different guys that can score. if Trae Young, Bogdanovich had a solid game. Clint Capella's been a solid piece, and obviously Gallinari's been solid too. And they're pretty good depth wise. We'll see what they do against the next round. And as of right now, I think I picked the Knicks to win it. It just seems like that the Knicks just don't have they can't get enough offense to keep up. Or yes, their defense can slow down the Hawks for periods of time, but then their offense just is nothing. And then the Hawks eventually figure things out, and then so I imagine the Knicks win Game 5, but I think the series will end in 6. Just right now, the Hawks have too many answers to the Knicks, and the Knicks don't have enough answers, you know, otherwise. So, that's my thoughts in regards to that series. What about you?
I also picked the Knicks, and looking back, I don't know why I did because
They're on
this
a roll.
tends
I thought
they
that
were on a roll, and
you know
I thought maybe the defense and all this kind of stuff, and Trey Young had a good year, but had some different inconsistencies, and so I thought the Knicks may be able to figure it out. Also, I wasn't sold on Collins and Gallinari
yeah
and Capella's ability to stop Julius Randle. But credit to the Hawks. I mean, they've done a really good job. Julius Randle, which I didn't even know this, he led the league this year in isolations as like an individual player. And so the Hawks have done everything they can to stop him when he's getting into the isolations. And it just seems like when he's on the court, it feels like there's not like a real flow to the offense. And that's not, I don't think that's Julius Randle's fault. I just think once again, there's a weird, just a weird talent gap between these teams realistically. And looking back, that's why I'm like, I don't know why I picked the Knicks, because typically in the playoffs, it's the better player, the more talented team. That's who wins the series. When it's LeBron versus whatever team, because he's LeBron, and historically they win the series, right? Which this year we'll get into that. It's a little different, but the Hawks. I mean, that when you compare these two teams and their two stars, I think I consider Trae Young to be better than Julius Randle. I think a lot of people would consider Trae Young to be better than Julius Randle, and so there's the edge there. But also just the talent level between the two teams. Once again, Hawks have the edge, and so they should win the series. I think they'll probably close it out in Game 5. I think that Trae Young is motivated to just go and shut up the New York crowd. I like the trash talk between the two teams, although I don't think that kind of stuff is going to fly when they play Philly.
yeah like that's
So you can start trash talking, and then Ben Simmons will lock you up, and
oh and
Julius Randle will
Trey,
dunk all
you
over your
you're
boys.
6'1" and like probably barely 200. Like Trey Young should
Yeah.
not be your enforcer trash talker on your team.
Yeah.
Like he can.
Well, I mean,
I'm not against him chirping every now and then, but he should not be your main trash talker.
who is on that team though? Like,
The-
I can't remember who said it. There was some other NBA player who said it. I think it was Draymond Green, and he tweeted out, and he's like,
he was
"I'm
happy.
glad the whole league, sees now that Trey Young is one of the biggest trash talkers in the NBA." So that was funny. But yeah, I think the Hawks are probably going to close this one out. The Knicks, the one thing that I wanted to point to too is this tends to happen with Tom Thibodeau teams, is because of how hard he pushes and he gets players to buy into practicing harder, playing harder, all that kind of stuff. It bodes really well for them in the regular season, and that's why they tend to be seeded a little higher than most people expect. Like I think even both of us agreed, the Knicks don't feel like a 4 seed, but because of how hard they push in the regular season, that's where Tom Thibodeau teams, like, they get higher seeded than they probably should be. And then in the playoffs, that's where you start to see the fatigue. I mean, is it a coincidence that their most productive player right now is Derrick Rose, who wasn't even on the team all year, and was coming off the bench throughout the regular season? So yeah, it's going to be the Hawks to win. Also, I think if you're having to rely on Derrick Rose at this point in his career being your go-to guy to lead you through games, it's not going to bode well for you in the playoffs. That's no shot at Derrick Rose, but he's just not at a point in his career where he's like the go-to guy.
Yeah. So yeah, and so basically, yeah, I think we both agree. They just need to add pieces. They need more pieces.
Yep.
They need more
Which
development.
they got the money.
They do
so.
have the money, and they're New York, so we'll see if they can address that via the off season.